32. The stage is divided into two parts. On the left, we are in a community hall at a meeting to celebrate the anniversary of the Free Colored Ladies Society of Helping Hands to our colored seamen. There is a chair and a podium. A sign or quilt with the organization's name hangs prominently. This will remain throughout the play. On the right, scenes will change. At the top, we're in a tailor shop in Norfolk, Virginia, surrounded by cloth and thread, a male and a female mannequin, a desk and work table close to a doorway. Mr. Redding?
Yes. Good evening. Good evening.
Good evening.
All right, I am Nathaniel Redding, and I would like to welcome you. I am the president of the Baltimore Association for the Moral and Educational Improvement of Colored People. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you.
Welcome. Now, you may not know this, but in the 1820s, we had in Baltimore 10,000 enslaved coloreds. And well, there were 10,000 enslaved coloreds, but we had 17,000 free coloreds. We made up 1/4 of Baltimore's population. Isn't that something?
Yeah.
Did you know that?
No.
All right, see, we learn. Okay, we formed the Baltimore Colored Abolitionist Society in 1827, which is now today the Baltimore Association for Moral and Educational Improvement for Colored People. We are collectively working to uplift all people, and with that in mind, I have a few announcements to bring up before we introduce our esteemed guest. I'm also excited to see my good friend, Mrs. Lincoln's former dressmaker, Elizabeth Cackley. Everybody give her a hand. She is with us today, and I want to take a moment to recognize her superior skills as an exclusive dressmaker to the President's First Lady. She's something. And I want to highlight her book writing accomplishments. I don't know if you know this, but she is the fast-selling author of Behind the Scenes, or 30 Years a Slave and 4 Years in the White House. Now, that's some book. I read it. And she gives a frank account of what it was like during that time. I tell you, it's a tell-all book. You don't want to miss it. And if you have a challenge reading, this might be a book to get you to finish. All right? You work on your reading, you won't put it down. So Ms. Cackley's book is also on the reading list for the Baltimore African Education Reading Circle, which meets every Wednesday at 6 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. at the Baltimore African Methodist Episcopalian Fellowship Hall. Now, they all have said welcome, and they would like you all to attend. So just be aware that'll be on our board of announcements. So now, before our guest, Miss Williams, she, by the way, she's with the Free Ladies Society for Colored Seamen. Before she addresses us, I need to prep us a little bit. Now, Miss Williams is quite some woman. She had so many contributions to our freedom story. You know, it's very complicated. It's very complicated. So much is not told. But so her work is really grounded in how the colored sailors had a lot to do with our freedom. And so as we fight for our rights and as we make way, we want to recognize this story that she's going to tell us today. Now, she also, she has here that, okay, there will be music and everyone has to sing. Okay. How many singers do we have in the house? Everybody sings. If you have a voice, you can sing. All right. Now, we're not just singing songs. These are sea shanties. Everybody know what a sea shanty is? It's like a work song. Everybody know what a work song is? Yeah. All right. You hear about work songs in the field, and some of you got to clean your house. You may put some music on, right? Why do you put music on? Helps the work go a little easier, right? Also gets you to think and focus, right? So that's what work songs are all about. Also, they were used as codes. There are lots of ways to use these work songs. So sea shanties for folks working on the sea, the colored sailors. They had these sea shanties. And so, let's see, because basically she said that in her story, she's going to need the audience to sing along these sea shanties. So let's prep you So everybody has their program? Okay. All right, so we'll go through these. I'm not the best singer in the world, but we're going to help Miss Williams out. All right, the first one is Shallow Ground. All right, so there's simply a call and a response. You may see a lot of lyrics here. We're not going to sing all those lyrics, folks. We're just going to sing the what?
Chorus.
Yeah, the chorus, the response. I'll do the call, you do response. You got it? All right. Well, I'm bound away to leave you. Oh, shallow ground. I'm bound away to leave you. Oh, shallow ground. All right, that gets about a 3 and it's getting 1 to 10. That's lovely. All right. So remember, we're on the C, so it kind of has a cadence, right? Well, I'm bound away to leave you. Oh, shallow ground. Well, I'm bound away to leave you. Oh, shallow ground. All right, that might sail this boat, y'all. All right, good. Nice to have voices in the room. All right, let's see what else Miss Williams has here. Okay. You ain't nothing but a humbug. That sounds. You ain't nothing but a humbug. So they say, so they say. You ain't nothing but a humbug. That's all I know. Those are the 2 lines you have. So they say, that's all I know. Got it? All right. You ain't nothing but a humbug. So they say, so they say. You ain't nothing but a humbug. That's all I know. All right, that'll sail a ship. All right, good. All right, here's one down by the river Gambia. Oh, Cariba. Down by the river Gambia, boys. Oh, Cariba. Folks there are dying. Oh, Cariba. That's weeping and a sighing, boys. Oh, Cariba. All right, we sound like something. All right. Drinking of the wine. Anybody know that one? If my mother asks for me, tell her that the summon me. You ought to been there 10,000 years, drinking of the wine. Oh, wow. Everybody drink any wine so far? Come on, you drink wine. The more you drink, the better we sound. Right? The better we sound. You gotta drink some. All right, one more time. And that's one of those. If my mother asks for me, tell her that done summon me. You ought to been there 10,000 years, drinking up the wine. Here we go. Drinking up the wine, wine, wine. Drinking up the wine, that holy wine. You ought to been there 10,000 years, drinking up the wine. Yeah. Oh, yeah, got it. All right, I think we're ready to bring our esteemed guests on, ladies and gentlemen, from the Free Colored Ladies Society for Colored Seamen. Please welcome Thessalonia Williams.
Thank you all for inviting me to address the Free Colored Ladies Society for Helping Hands to our colored seamen on this anniversary and outreach occasion. As Mr. Redding said, my name is Thessalonia Williams. I was born a slave, but I'm free now. Hallelujah. We all are. I come from a long line of seamen, including my daddy, my husband, and my son who now carries on in his father's footsteps. And I want to share with you tonight how they helped us on the road to freedom. Well, I'm going away to leave you. Oh, shallow ground. Yes, I'm going away to leave you. tomorrow. Oh, shallow ground. My husband Levi, Leviticus Ezra Williams, was already a free man when I met him. It was on a Thursday, November 14th, 1829. I wasn't free. I was apprenticed as a seamstress to Carlisle Taylor in Norfolk, Virginia. We made soldiers and sailor uniforms, and the ladies loved my fancy dress work as well. So there I was that morning, sewing a beautiful moire silk dress, when I heard right outside in the street this silly song my daddy used to sing to us when we was little.
You ain't nothing but a humbug.
So they say, so they say.
You ain't nothing but a humbug.
That's all I know.
Catfish grow on a huckleberry vine.
So they say, so they say.
Catfish grow on a huckleberry vine.
That's all I know. Then the man who had been singing it walked in the door, and the sun walked in with him. He had a glow, brown shiny skin, shiny white teeth, and eyes too big for a man.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Then I missed the rest. I was so busy staring and feeling. When I come to myself and realized I had been staring and my mouth was a little open and he was smiling at that, well, good thing you can't see me blush, because I sure did get hot. He said his name was Levi, and said again.
What I'm trying to say is I think the lining of my coat might need fixing. This is Carlisle Taylor.
Nice sturdy canvas, good tall coat to keep the weather out, heavy flannel lining, and a thickness. Well, sir, I believe you might need to replace this lining.
And I thought to myself, is this him? You see, my daddy Isaiah, who was a boatman himself, as I mentioned, had told me a while back to be on the lookout for a man singing that song because he would be delivering a book. I asked him what was going on, what was in that book. He just gave me that look, so I didn't ask nothing further. After which, days and weeks go by, I forgot all about it. And now, was this him, the delivery man? He looked a little perplexed and doubtful because I was so flummoxed. And my master noticed it too from all the way across the room because he got up and started to come over.
Never mind. It's not urgent. It will last a little while longer. Ma'am, I am not from these parts. Do you know of a place that I can stay?
Well, all the men stay at Mr. Buford's.
So naturally I sent him there. And I was staying right next door to Miss Viola, so when he see me the next morning, we commenced to chat and taking a measure of each other.
Scene 2, porch outside Miss Viola's boarding house.
Yes, ma'am, I am free. Since the War of 1812.
Free.
Yes, both the British and the Americans offered colored men's freedom in exchange for fighting. And the British paid more money.
Oh.
But I didn't want to risk not being able to see my kinfolk. So I fought for the American side, worked with Denmark Vesey on a few trips later on too, before they put them quarantine laws in place down there in South Carolina to lock a man up when he comes to shore.
They don't have quarantine here yet, but you knew Denmark Vesey. My daddy told me all about him.
Your daddy? What do your daddy know about Denmark Vesey?
He was that boatman, organized that rebellion there in Charleston. He's a boatman too, my daddy. He's a slave, but he got his own crew to deliver and pick up all over Chesapeake Bay and his bug-eye.
Oh.
Yes, sir. He is dark and pure African. Got the marks on his chest. Always seemed taller than everybody, but maybe that's from when I was little. And he smiled a lot too. Don't give no trouble, but don't back down none from them either. He was a canoe man over there in Africa and knew all about the sea. But he got kidnapped and put to work on a slaver coming here. When you get him to talk about it, which isn't often, because it makes him sad, he say his homeland is by the Gambia River. Down by the river of Gambia.
Oh, Khalifa.
Down by the river of Gambia, boys.
Oh, Khalifa.
Well, that is one of my favorite songs, and your daddy sounds like a man I would love to meet. Even though they don't have them quarantine laws here, I do have to report back to my ship.
Well, you'll notice that he didn't mention that book, and neither did I.
Scene 3, family hut on the plantation.
All day at work, I kept thinking about that book and about my daddy, who would smile when he didn't play. Like this time when I was young and our family was still all together. There was this crazy killing overseer. Came drunk one night demanding to talk to my mother. My father went to the door of the cabin smiling.
I want to talk to Ruth.
Well, sir, she feeling mighty low. She sure be better by morning cold.
Next night, same thing. He smiled at white man on the way from the door.
I want to talk to Ruth.
Well, sir, she's still feeling mighty low. Sure she'll be better real soon.
Third night, Overseer Jenkins was his name, came drunk again, and with his whip.
Isaiah, you know what I want, and I will have it.
No, sir, you won't.
Smile gone. He looked that white man right in his eye and said,
No, sir, you won't.
that Jenkins got so red, thought he was gonna go into a fit right there. Raised that whip and hit my father. My father snatched that whip out of his hand and hit him back. Knocked him right down. He seemed to get even taller and darker then. Well, that white man Jenkins was so shocked, scared too, what he seen in my daddy's eye. Got up and went on back to his cabin. And we spent a sleepless night, afraid he might come back with reinforcements. But the next 3 days, he was overcome with vomiting and that other, like to die. Maybe somebody poisoned him a little. He packed off soon enough. That's all I know.
Scene 4, boarding house.
Well, I hurried on home that night, and there he was on the porch, that sailor Levi. I spoke dignified, sweet, gave him a smile, and went on in the house. Doesn't pay for a lady to appear too eager. But when I happened to glance out the window, there he was looking up. And that next morning, just so, he asked me if he could walk me to work.
Where's home when you ain't sailing?
I'm from a free black village in New York called the Hills. I had already won my freedom, but my family got manumitted from the quake of Williams a few years later, and I settled there. I've been all over to Charleston and Mobile and down in the Caribbean over to London. Big ships, little boats, Pedagawas, draggers with all colored crews. Free and slave, mixed crews, white, black, even foreigners.
Massa hired my daddy out to do runs right by the river, but sometimes he'd go out longer. To New Orleans, Jamaica, Haiti, and even all over there in Europe. Speaks several languages too. His own, of course, English, Spanish, and a little French.
Shut up.
He once met some black pirates, had their own ship. They asked him to join, but he told them no, thank you. He had a family. He was that good with boats. They wanted to force him, but they saw he'd be too much trouble to deal with, and they'd have to kill him, so they left him alone.
Too much trouble, huh? And your daddy ever been on a whale?
No.
Well, I've been on one once. But only once. We was gone for 2 years, got all the way over to Australia. Yeah, I liked it well enough. See, if a man could do a job good, he went on ahead and did it and got respect for it too. But I was away too long. I'm with the daddy there. Man couldn't have no proper family like that.
No.
Well, that evening I didn't rush in the house. Levi invited me to accompany him to Miss Johnny Day's, where you can get the finest food you ever want. Ooh, the heads turned when we came in there. But it was all perfectly respectable, so I didn't care what they were saying. I believe we had a nice dinner. Wasn't paying too much attention to the food. Afterwards, he invited me to go to a place where we could get something called ice cream. Well, I had heard about this but never tasted it. And maybe I didn't know exactly where we was going. And maybe it turned out to be a little far, but we was walking and talking about learning.
I grew up reading colored sailor biographies like Equiano and Britton Harriman. I read the U.S. Constitution and I even read the Haitian Declaration of Independence.
I did too. It was from when my daddy came back from Haiti and he started calling himself Tusa. So I asked him what Tusa stands for. And he said, more than one, sir, less than three, sir. Go on and count for me. And that's how I learned how to count. But not to keep quiet about it. So one day in the packing shed, I announced my daddy got 11 bags. Everybody stopped everything and started looking at me. Uh-oh is right. Boss man cried.
How do you know what is 11?
And picked up his whip. My tongue stuck to the roof of my mouth. Daddy spoke up.
No, sir, my fault. I teached her. Just playing. It's my fault. I teached her.
Got to make an example, I say. Somebody got to take them licks, because ain't none of you allowed to count.
I'll take them, sir. I see that she don't do that no more.
They licked me once anyhow. Licked him twice as hard for teaching me.
Folks, they are dying.
Oh, Khalifa.
There's weeping and a sighing, boys.
Oh, Khalifa.
Later when we in the cabin and my mom applying the salve on his welts, I thought Daddy would be mad for sure and lick me again.
Ain't never gonna lick you for knowing, huh? Just don't let on no more.
And then he started learning me to read. So when he took that paper from that secret hiding place and read it from time to time, I said nothing about it. I did look at it though, and it was from Toussaint Louverture, who led the people to freedom over there in Haiti. And I also realized why my daddy called himself Tusa.
Come rock and roll me over.
Oh, Khalifa.
Come rock and roll me over.
Oh, Khalifa.
Down by the river Gambia.
Oh, Khalifa.
Oh, down by the river Gambia, boys.
Oh, Khalifa.
Well, there we was in the middle of I didn't quite know where, eating ice cream, which sure was tasty, singing in the street and holding hands. I was mortified. But before I could catch my breath good,
That's Salonia.
Yes?
You mentioned earlier that your daddy loaned out to the farm where Reverend Nat Turner is.
Well, no, I didn't, but yes indeed. That Nat Turner show can't preach.
That's what I hear. And that book in the lining of my coat is for Reverend Turner.
So it was it. Took you long enough?
Well, I had to be sure, didn't I?
I suppose so.
I tried not to act too excited. Because my father, my brothers too, they didn't tell me nothing. Now here I was all up on the inside of it. Well, we more or less hurried back home and now my feet felt the distance. He handed me his coat before going in, and ain't nobody paid attention to that because everybody knowed I was the best seamstress around and we all picked up side jobs when we could.
Scene 6, boarding house bedroom.
I went directly to my room and picked the stitches out of that lining ever so careful and extracted them bundles of pages wrapped up in that oilcloth. And I picked, and I picked, and I read.
David Walker's appeal to colored citizens of the world. but in particular and very expressly to those of the United States of America.
Now, that was some fancy title. And what that Mr. Walker had to say was something else again.
They want us for their slaves, and think nothing of murdering us.
It is no more harm for you to kill a man who is trying to kill you than it is for you to take a drink of water when thirsty.
Put me to mind of that verse in Exodus. And if any mischief follow, thou shalt give life for life, eye for eye, tooth for tooth. Well, that next morning when I gave Sailor Levi back his coat and them pages, why, he walked me all the way to the shop again, grinning and telling me his sailor stories.
So one time down in Charleston, I had a family of 5, including an infant under the lifeboats. And the weather was so bad. 3 days of nothing but rain. But they managed to keep that little one quiet, and I got them safely to Philadelphia without the captain noticing. It was close call, though.
A few days later, when my daddy came to port, I introduced them, and Levi delivered that book to him. Then,
Sir, I would be honored if you would allow me to have your daughter's hand in marriage.
just like that, my daddy didn't say nothing, just studied him a while. Then he looked at me, I was speaking. He gave Levi a short nod and a small smile.
Danny Jim from South Carolina.
So they say, so they say.
He come home and married Dinah.
That's all I know. So we got married on my master's plantation where my mom and family was. When my mama seed Levi, she said, Thessalonian, you done got yourself a man. My brothers liked him too, Malachi, Samuel, Ezekiel, and my little brothers, Matthew and Luke. Took a little while for my sister Rebecca to warm up. She had heard bad things about sailors, but she finally did. We moved into a little house of our own in town. Didn't cause too much fractious, him being free and me slave. We had other neighbors like that. He would have bought me outright. But I told him to buy his old auntie first. Her position over to Old Churdley Plantation was much more precarious than mine. There was a little bit of time concern though, because we did get pregnant almost right away, and slavery do follow the mother. Meanwhile, every few weeks, a sailor, even sometimes a white one, would come to the tailor shop singing that song. You ain't nothing but a humbug, so they say, so they say. You ain't nothing but a humbug, that's all I know. And I would direct him to Mr. Buford's, quietly take his coat for repair, and extract them pages of David Walker's appeal from it. And then books were snatched right up in the towns and port cities. And men like my daddy, who had routes along them inland waterways up to the most isolated and outlying plantations, they passed that book right along too. Why, in just 6 months, David Walker's appeal to the colored citizens was all up and down the East Coast. As my pregnancy started to grow, Levi started taking shorter trips 2 or 3 times a month, but still bringing in the appeal and other abolitionist writings as well. I love my husband, and he loved me too, I never doubted it. One night though, I was in my 5th or 6th month, and he was on shore leave, but he didn't come home all night alone. I did not take too kindly to his disappearing like that.
I'm so alone when you on the water. Now I gotta be alone when you home too?
I love you. I ain't did nothing wrong, but I can't tell you.
Say you love me, then you gotta tell me something.
I can't. I don't want you involved.
Involved in what, Levi? What are you doing?
Don't ask me. I just can't. That's the end of it.
We are getting ready to have a baby. This is just the beginning, and this baby, I want a free baby. Is what you involved in gonna make my baby free?
Don't ask me.
Well, is it?
Yes! I've been over to the plantation where your daddy is at, meeting with Nat Turner and some other men. He talking about God's children getting free, being free, overcoming the evil of slaving a man to death.
He was so excited, my Levi, but he also looked great. How can a shiny brown man look great, you might ask? But he did. He said folks talk about running, but Nat Turner was talking about something else entirely.
Rev Turner read from Mr. Walker's book. Then he bust out in song, and those tunes you done heard all your life take on a whole new meaning. If my mother asks for me, tell her death don't summon me. You ought to been there 10,000 years, drinking of the wine. Talk about Denmark Vesey in South Carolina, Gabriel Prosser in Virginia, them down there in Louisiana, and the smaller fights the white folks don't put in their papers.
But talk Philly around you like you don't have no ears or a brain to think about what you heard or a mouth to repeat it.
This, Reverend Turner said he done received a sign.
You right? Don't tell me no more. So if anybody asks me, I can say, no, missus, I suspect he visited. Say you love the feel of the land when you hear it. I won't sleep much on the nights when you were gone.
Well, I'm going away to leave you. Oh, shallow ground.
But I never will deceive you.
Oh, shallow ground.
They was preparing to fight. Hard to think about killing your neighbors. Folks you done grown up with, some of your kin. Got weary getting beat down though by those same neighbors and kin. Like that child they treated worse than a dog. He stayed under the table and they threw food on the floor to him. And long while after you got sick, they would call a veterinary doctor. And he always said you was good enough to go back to work. They worked people to death. Regularly broke up families, ruined the wives and daughters. And all that got even worse whenever the crops wasn't good. Folks just getting fed up with being slaves. When we visited the plantation or sometimes in town and I seen Levi and my daddy or brothers or other men together, they had their own nothing that was something going on. No signals or head turns or handshakes, none of that. But they had a bond. You could see that if you was looking for it extra special. And even then, you was liable to miss or mistake it.
Scene 7, the plantation.
Well, sir, seemed like Nat Turner got cold feet for a while. But then he got that next sign. From who? God, of course. All that Bible reading like Isaiah 43:2. They shall not overflow thee when thou walkest through the fire. Thou shalt not be burned, neither shall the flame kindle upon you. And Deuteronomy 20. When thou goest out to battle against thine enemies, be not afraid of them. For the Lord thy God is with thee, which brought thee up out of the land of Egypt. Let not your hearts be faint, fear not. God protected his armies in his name, sent pillars and clouds, parted the sea, and guided his people to fight. Masters pointed to them verses about knowing your place. And after a while, we figured we know it. And it was on the side of freedom. Even the ones betrayed us did it for freedom, just their own, of course. On August 21st, 1831, my daddy and brothers and my Levi went marching off with Reverend Turner. My sister Rebecca dressed up like a man and went on with him too. Two white horses side by side, cannot ride but the sanctified. You ought to been there 10,000 years, drinking of the wine. For 2 days, they went from plantation to plantation, taking horses and guns, freeing and recruiting other slaves along the way. They killed about 60 white men, women, and children. In response, the white folks organized militias and called out regular troops.
My daddy, my brothers, they all got killed. Nat Turner wasn't captured for 2 months. White mobs attacked more than 100 and killed more than 100 coloreds, many who wasn't even involved, including my little brothers Matthew and Luke, who were 9 and 11. Levi and Rebecca, too, we found out later, ended up escaping to the north. Praise God. All the businesses in town shut down, and me and my son Amos, we were called back to the plantation. We couldn't have no service, no church, no meeting of any kind. My mind ached, but my heart I kept hidden. One day, Master called me over to the front yard fence in front of a group of them white men with their dogs and their guns, and my 2-year-old Amos in the middle. That stench in the air from those heads on the fence poles, and my son, so small, but standing quiet and still, like my daddy and me teached him, water running down his leg.
I think you know something, Thessalonian.
No, sir, I don't know nothing at all.
Your dad was right up in there with that murdering Nat Turner. And where your husband?
Ain't seen my daddy since don't know when, and he ain't much for talking nowhere. And Levi, with all that fool talk about another woman up north, I told him I don't never want to see him no more. He gone 3 months now, don't know nothing at all.
How about your boy here? What'd he know? Can you read, boy?
No, master, he can't even talk good. Just a baby dumb nigga chop.
Just in case.
Hunting knife cut off the little finger of his left hand, and they threw it down in the dirt. Mama fixed up Amos's hand, and after a while he stopped screaming. I went back then, and I picked up that little finger and I buried it in the creek, recited my daddy's my favorite passage by the David Walker's Appeal. It is no more harm for you to kill a man who is trying to kill you than it is for you to take a drink of water when you're thirsty. And I pledged it to teach it to my son. Then I sang to the birds in the sky in memory of Reverend Turner and my daddy and my brothers, and that was their homegoing service.
If you get there before I do, tell my mother I'm coming too. You ought to been there 10,000 years, drinking up the wine.
Down by the river, we're gonna walk. Me and my Lord gonna have a little talk.
You ought to been there 10,000 years, drinking up the wine. If my mother asks for me, tell her death done summoned me. You ought to been there 10,000 years, drinking up the wine. Drinking up the wine, wine, wine. Drinking up the wine, that holy wine. You ought to been there 10,000 years, drinking up the wine. After a while, things calmed down. My mama, well, she held on. And I went back to work in the tail shop. Everything was harder. More laws, more restrictions against reading, ciphering, and meeting. But the sailors kept coming. Levi sent a letter with one of them. Said Rebecca had kept going all the way to Canada when she was doing all right, praise God. And that he was in Philadelphia and would be coming for us soon. And he did too, about a year later. But in the meantime, we recruited new boatmen and developed new routes to share the information them sailors brought and to help others to escape. Because you can't kill freedom. Well, my master's gonna sell me, oh, shallow ground. Says he'll sell me to a Yankee, oh, shallow ground. Says he'll sell me for $1, oh, shallow ground. A big fat Spanish dollar, oh, shallow ground. Gonna climb that chilly mountain, oh, shallow ground. Try to find that silver fountain, oh, shallow ground. Very well, my Juliana, oh, shallow ground. Very well, my Juliana, oh, shallow ground.
The end.
Well, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So now,
A little Q&A, right?
yeah, anybody has any questions?
Before we do that,
Yes.
let's introduce our cast. Right? We have Joey Trevino.
Yes.
Donnie Henson. Warren Miller.
Oh,
And Deanna Carroll, folks. All right, so, any questions? Comments? Yes.
Oh, I just wondered, so much of this is based on history. What about the actual cutting of the finger and things like that? Do you have evidence for that as well?
no, I added that. Yeah. And I'm sure it happened in worse, because they
I know in
did.
Haiti it was worse, because I studied that.
Yeah, but at the Nat Turner Rebellion, with the white mobs, they went and just killed everybody wholesale. It was like kind of, who was it that killed all the boy children in the Bible?
Herod.
So it's kind of like that. They went and killed all the boy children, and they hung their heads on poles all around so that people could see that and smell that. So that was true.
That was great performing, guys. Thank you so much for that. That was really good.
Yeah.
And when the one got to Philadelphia, you got to Philadelphia, they didn't have the Dred Scott decision yet, but could you be free in Philadelphia, or
Philadelphia was a
you'd
free-
be sent back?
Well, by 1850s, there were the fugitive slave laws, and before that.
Yeah.
So they were always trying to make sure that people could be sent back. But Philadelphia was a free state, so you could go there. Many people were there that had really, really strong organizing and resistance in Philadelphia. William Still, who was a really great abolitionist, he was out of Philadelphia. He was a black man out of Philadelphia. He wrote this huge tome of stories. But I'd like to say that, what motivated me, first I was going to write something about the Nat Turner Rebellion, and I read this about this young man named David Walker, who's a radical abolitionist in Boston, and how he wrote this David Walker's Appeal, which is like 90 pages, back in 1829, 1830, and to read it, you would think you're reading something by Malcolm X, because it was so fiery. And he did sew he had his own printing press, and he sewed the pages of his book in the sailors' uniforms. And so, so then that led me to like, well, what about these sailors? Because they're just like completely erased out of our history. But the sailors, I mean, they were men that traveled the world. And they brought back news. And they brought back freedom stories, and they were treated differently and well. They were literate. The first 6 books written by Americans, autobiographies, were written by sailors. When I went with Catherine to New Zealand in January, I saw a grave marker from a sailor from 1864 over there in the North Island of New Zealand. That was really fabulous. And there's this book by a woman named Martha Putney. It's a black woman. She just wrote this huge tome. She combed identification records and so forth. And she shows evidence that we were in Australia and Japan and everywhere, all over, and coming back, and it was so effective. The stories, and it was so effective that they did started jailing the sailors when they would come to port, because they didn't want them talking to the people and stirring the people up. Of course, the people were also in jail too, so I don't know what they thought was going to happen. But they did that. So the sailors were really, really important in our freedom story, but completely missing. And their songs tell a story like our songs tell so many stories. We use them how we use them. Sometimes they're work songs, and sometimes they're songs for the heart, and sometimes they're code songs, freedom and escape songs. And so the sea shanties were as well. So that's what led me to write this, and I'm really glad that y'all sang along. How did you feel about that? I want to know.
You got a little better as we went along.
Because you sounded good from here, so I really enjoyed that. So I thank you. I thank you very much for singing along, Jane.
Yeah, it's fascinating. A couple questions, but I'm going to ask 2. Shallow Brown and Thessalonians, very specific names. I wondered if those are real names and what does that mean and what is it significant? I never heard the name Shallow. And the other thing is, can you talk about what a sea shanty is and like what, we learned it before you got here. So we were primed, but is there a difference between a sea shanty and just a traditional call and response? Of tell us.
Well, Shallow Brown is the name of a song, and the thing that I really love about African music, African American music, is that it morphs to be what it will be. So some places you read it's Shiloh Brown, some places you read it's something else, some other variation. Some people say he was singing to, his woman who was a light-skinned, buxom woman from the islands, and somebody else has another story about it, but that is the name of a traditional sea shanty. I'm gonna get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
Thessalonia, I just opened the Bible.
All right.
And I'm like, what could be her name?
Okay.
And we're very biblical people, so I'm like, okay, let's give her a Bible name.
All right.
And a sea shanty is a work song. It's a song because back in the day, they didn't have like all the machines and whatever, and people had to haul the sails up and bring them down, and all sorts of hard labor. And so what people did in order to focus themselves and so they could do it together was they would sing a song. Somebody would call and they would pull or push or do whatever they were going to do on the response so that they could get the job done. And you saw this happen on the sea, and it also happened in the field, and it happened when they're doing the railroads, just so people could focus their energy and move something all together or do something all together that would move them forward in their work. And you also notice that, like that drinking of the wine song, for instance, you might go in a little tiny church here in Harlem or on the back road somewhere and hear it as a communion song in church. You might do, because people use the song how they use the song, and it was not considered sacrilegious.
And where did you find the songs? tell us about that research.
Okay, so I had this story about David Walker, and I didn't know how the Sailor song sounded. So Keith and I went to we did this show in Massachusetts a few years ago, and there was a woman there who attends regularly the Sea Music Festival, which they have them all around the country. And people get together and they sing. And like this one is at the Sea...
Mystic, Connecticut.
Mystic, Connecticut. Yeah, the Seaport Museum there, if you've ever been there. And every weekend, this is the 37th or 38th year they do it, and they come together on Thursday and they sing from morning until late at night. They finish the workshops, they go across the street to the German Beer Hall, and they sing till 3 or 4 in the morning. And it's like being in a revival service. It's really amazing. Somebody just starts singing, they call and respond, these songs. So that's how I found these songs at the Sea Music Festival. Catherine and I went, and I pulled down these 4 that we've been singing together. And we went back this year. We did an excerpt of the show, just Keith and I. And we had, and because those people sing all the time, when we started singing, they joined right in. And I'm like, oh, I would really like for that to be a part of the piece. Yeah.
She wrote Mr. Redding for this, right? The character I played. At that festival, everybody sang full out. It was quite shocking. Hey man, ain't nothing but a humbug, so they say. Yeah, they're serious.
Yeah,
They're serious about these sea shanties.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am.
Oh, I love the sense of immersion, that the fact that we were all part of a meeting that it opened with. It really gets you right.
Oh, okay, well, thank you. Yeah. Yes.
So you mentioned that she went to Canada, the Rebecca sister?
Yes, uh-huh.
So what connections would she have made up there, or?
Well, that was someplace, people, when they ran from the South, a lot of them stopped in Philadelphia. Some would go, like, to my hometown, York, Columbia, somewhere in the north. Some would go a little further to Boston, and some would just go all the way to Canada because they wanted to bother with those fugitive slave laws. And Canada didn't allow people to come up there and snatch people back. So there's a sizable black community of people in Canada who ran and just made their life there. Yeah.
Well, that's just in terms of Canada. During the Revolutionary War, slaves that sided with the British got protection after the war and settled in Canada. So by the time we get to the middle of the 19th century, there were black communities that were already there. Some of them did actually get back to Africa, and that's how Sierra Leone was founded as a colony. But in fact, there were black communities in Nova Scotia, for example, again, going back to the 18th century, as well as some that had been thrown out of the British Caribbean and sent up to Nova Scotia. So, there had been communities there for a few generations by then.
The Fugitive Slave Act was a tricky law because there was incentive to tear up somebody's papers and send them right back into slavery. I think you got $5 if you caught somebody with their freedom papers and $10 who was a runaway. So it just wasn't safe even in the free states. Right? The law was set up where you could also manipulate it, and so that's the tricky part about these laws, right? So yeah, Canada was a safe haven.
Judge Riker, his family had Rikers Island for a while. He was notorious for taking money under the table and sending free blacks down to the South.
Yeah, that was something that was done regularly.
Now they just keep them on Rikers Island.
Right. That's the new system. Comments, questions?
What's next for this piece?
Well, I'm writing grants, trying to, get it up so we can have lights and sound,
All right.
everything.
And obviously the same actors, obviously.
Weren't these guys great?
Could I take this moment to ask people to think about contributing to bringing this show to the next step? I'm just going to pass these around. There's a little bit of pressure, but not like, no pressure, a little bit of pressure.
Well, this is a first draft, right? And,
Right, it is.
yeah, we're looking at pulling out some more scenes from the narrative. Vienna's a brilliant historian and playwright, and so how we work is she'll write the narrative, and I'll kind of pull some of the scenes and start putting stuff in different characters' mouths. So this is the beginning, right? As we're putting it together.
Well, then I do have a question. I mean, since it is a work in progress,
Yeah, absolutely.
what, given the framework that you began with, at the meeting, at the end of the play, you ended your story, not without going back to the meeting. So I wondered what went into that decision.
Just didn't think about it.
Yeah, this is the beginning.
Yeah.
That's not the end. We didn't end the play yet. As far as it's gone so far. So yeah, it'll come back to the meeting, and we'll probably have some musicians. So.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, everybody. Really appreciate it.
Have some more to drink.
Yeah, there's nibbles and there's more